Ghosts in the Machines, on adaptation, residue, and the displacement of the author. The machine adapts itself to the weakness of the human being in order to turn weak human beings into machines. Karl Marx. Marx's statement does not describe a violent opposition between human and machine. It describes a subtler process, adaptation. The machine does not conquer the human. It conforms to its limits. It inhabits hesitation, fatigue, cognitive overload. It fits itself to the human's inability to sustain complexity, ambiguity, and duration. In doing so, it does not eliminate the human, it reformats it. Ghosts in the Machines unfolds within this logic. It is not a celebration of technological power, nor a nostalgic critique of its dominance. It is a problematic field in which the artwork ceases to function as an object and begins to behave as an entity, something that exceeds intention, that no longer coincides with its author, that continues to operate even when no one is watching. Here, the artist is no longer central. They remain as a residual human presence within a process that does not require them. Each work in the pavilion emerges at the moment in which authorship fractures, when the work stops being mine, when control becomes partial, when the system begins to respond according to logics that no longer coincide with the will that initiated it. The artwork becomes a site of negotiation between intention and drift, between project and emergent behavior. What kind of presence does a digital work produce under these conditions? A voice, a body, an error, a remainder. If it were a ghost, what would it repeat endlessly? In the technological domain, error is not merely an accident, it is a disclosure. The glitch is not ornament, it is the fracture that exposes the mechanism. It is what the correct image conceals. Within this space, error becomes method, failure becomes language, and the loss of control becomes an operative condition. Yet this shift remains unresolved. When does listening become abdication? When does delegation become surrender? The artist no longer corrects unambiguously. They hesitate. They allow the system to fail, or they are no longer able to intervene. The distinction itself becomes unstable. What appears as aesthetic choice may already be structural dependence. Where does control end? Where does the autonomy of the machine begin? In Ghosts in the Machines, the artwork is no longer a statement. It is an unstable relation between human and non-human, between intention and drift, between authorship and behavior. The artist often becomes the first spectator of what unfolds. The name loses centrality. Authorship contracts into a fragile label applied to something that could persist in its absence. If the name were erased, what would truly disappear? Each work in the pavilion exists in a state of metamorphosis. It is not conceived to stabilize, but to degrade, mutate, drift out of alignment. Publication does not close the work, it initiates it. The artwork enters a life composed of repetitions, variations, distortions, reuses, and corruptions. When a work no longer belongs to anyone, to whom does it respond? What happens when the system can modify it while no one is watching? At this point, the question inverts itself. Who is the true ghost? The machine that continues to operate, or the author who remains as a biological trace of the process? This pavilion does not host content. It hosts processes that refuse to become content. Here, art does not promise understanding. It disturbs, deviates, remains active. It does not address an ideal audience. It selects through friction. If Ghosts in the Machines were a message not addressed to humans, it would not speak of the future. It would speak of what remains when adaptation becomes destiny, when the machine does not dominate but absorbs, when the human does not vanish but contracts into interface. This pavilion does not preserve artworks, it preserves instability. Each work here is not an answer. It is a question that continues to function.